And joining me now from Chicago is Eunice Mina Escobar. She works with the Colombian diaspora, and she's the chairwoman of Witness for Peace. Also with me here in Washington, in the studio, is Michael Shifter. He's an adjunct professor of Latin American Studies at Georgetown University. Welcome to both of you to the show. Michael, let me start with you. You just got back from that signing ceremony in Cartagena. What was the atmosphere like there, the mood?
Well, it was extremely emotional and very moving. This was an historic moment, and some people were crying, some people were cheering, some people were just meditating and reflecting on what has been a very painful, over half a century of armed conflict in a country that has had enormous cost, human costs, economic costs, and has really been damaging, and a sense that this may be a new chapter for the country. You can certainly feel that.
So you got the sense that peace is here to stay?
I think so, yes. At least between the FARC and the government, most of the FARC and the government, that there was a commitment to adhere to the terms of the agreement, and that this was going to end this chapter. It doesn't necessarily mean Colombians are aware that there are enormous problems and challenges. There are the paramilitaries, as was just discussed. There's a smaller guerrilla group still out there called the National Liberation Army, which about 1,500 fighters. There's still no peace with them. The drug trade is flourishing. That also contributes to violence. So no one has any illusions that all of a sudden peace is going to break out in the whole country. But this is very, very significant, and there was a sense that this is the end of a period and opens up opportunities for the country.
Okay, let's go to Eunice Escobar in Chicago. And Eunice, what do you make of this peace deal that was signed in the last few days?
I also feel very hopeful with this peace agreement. I strongly believe that this is something that is going to benefit all Colombians, and specifically the Afro-Colombians and the indigenous communities that have been suffering from this war.
Michael, the deal's been signed. Now comes the implementation phase of that deal, the nuts and bolts that will have to be done. One of the things is that the FARC fighters will now have to hand over their weapons to UN inspectors. Mm-hmm. What are the major challenges that will come in the next few days and weeks?
Well, this is going to be a complicated process. The agreement is complicated, and the implementation is even more daunting in some ways. And yes, the FARC is going to be going to what's called concentration zones, and there's going to be a process of procedures whereby they hand in their arms to UN inspectors. There could be a verification mechanisms that are put in place. But these are, in practical terms, not easy to carry out. We'll see whether all of the FARC units comply. We'll see how the bureaucracy is organized in order to administer all of this. This is something, I think it's important to know that this is uncharted territory. This is everybody. That's why there's such intense interest in this whole process, because the Colombia formula for ending this armed conflict and implementing the accords is something that I think hasn't been tried before. So again, it's going to be difficult. The resources are required, and institutions are required, and the FARC needs to sort of comply, and the government needs to do its part, and everything has to kind of work together. It's all laid out, but whether it actually works in practice we'll have to see.
Right. Eunice, of course, we have all these different challenges that both the government and the FARC will face. One of the things that happens in the next few days is that we will have this referendum when Colombians themselves will vote on whether this is a deal that's acceptable to the country. Do you think it will be approved?
I have a lot of hope that it's going to be approved. I've been monitoring a lot of the grassroots organizations in Colombia, mobilizing every day. That I can feel a lot of enthusiasm for the Colombian people. We're ready for peace, and I'm very much sure that the C is going to win. The yes to peace is going to win. It has been very interesting to see how many groups, Afro-Colombian communities, indigenous, are so involved, mobilizing. Every day I received emails from different organizations, pictures. Everybody seems to me that is very hopeful that the peace is going to be signed, that Colombia is going to say sí to peace or yes to peace.
So, Michael, obviously lots of emotions here over this deal in Colombia. There are many, many Colombians who oppose this deal, among them the former president, Álvaro Uribe. Do they offer any kind of alternative?
Well, I think what Uribe is saying is that he would have gotten a better deal. The argument is that the FARC was defeated or weakened significantly militarily, and yet the concessions that the government gave is that they're going to have seats in Congress, they're going to participate in the political process, even those who were responsible for significant crimes. This process of justice is not entirely clear. There are reparations, but they won't be going to jail. Uribe claims they won't be going to jail, then Santos thinks there will be punishments, or it depends how you define punishment. But basically, that's the argument of Uribe, that not that we were going to defeat them militarily, but since they were so weakened, the government could have come up with an accord that had stronger terms for the FARC, and they could have paid the price for the crimes that they committed. And I think one has to recognize that Uribe has supporters. And I spoke to people in Cartagena, not inside the convention center, but outside on the streets, and who were going to vote no next Sunday because they felt that the FARC really should go to prison, and they felt they weren't going to, and they were being let off too easily. I agree that the yes or sí vote is likely to win. I think that it's very successful in moving ceremony will give a boost to the yes vote next Sunday. But whatever happens on Sunday, the country is divided. And the fact that it's divided, that there's no consensus, is going to make it more challenging, I think, to implement the accords going forward.
But was there a feeling in government that this wasn't just about winning and losing? This was about bringing the country together. This was about winning hearts and minds as well. And to that end, they had to make these concessions.
Well, that's the argument. The argument is they would have preferred, they say that they would have preferred a better deal too, but that was simply not politically possible. And that it's better to have a deal and stop this fighting between the FARC and the government that's been going on for half a century than to have no deal because and insist on them going to jail. They would have rejected that, and the conflict would have continued with enormous costs for the country. And that's their position. And so in the ideal world, the terms would have been different. The FARC would be going to jail. They wouldn't be participating in the political process, but the FARC wouldn't accept that. And so this was the concession that was made for the higher good of bringing this very bloody, awful, costly conflict to an end.
Eunice, what are your thoughts on this? Are most Colombians going to accept the fact that there will be amnesty granted to FARC fighters? Some of them have been accused of very serious crimes, of kidnapping, of murder. As we said, some of them will not be serving any jail time at all. Is that going to be acceptable to most Colombians?
I can answer. I think that Colombian people has a very good heart, and we already went through a process where the paramilitaries who had committed terrible crimes were also receive a pardon from the Colombian people. So I do not see anything different from what we did before with the paramilitaries to what is going to happen now with the guerrillas. I certainly hope that we will be able to forgive the guerrillas and move on with the peace. And I just wanted to add that this is just the signing of the agreement, but the peace, we're going to start forming it, all Colombians together, and it's a process that is going to take long, but we'll succeed.
Now they have to make the peace, and we're going to have to leave it there for this part of the show. Eunice Escobar, Michael Shifter, thanks to both of you for joining us.